check on that later. All right. All right. Oh, it's okay. All right. All right. Let's see where's the. All right. Not too close. Too far. Go back that off. Alright, I'm trying to push the gestures here. Good morning, everybody popping in. For some reason the Twitch link isn't working this morning, so I guess they don't get to come in. Good morning. Good morning. Anybody else a little sick out there? I've picked up something this week. Definitely was coming in all week, which was not fun to watch it. Like, why is my throat scratchy? Good morning. Alright, I'll put that more in the middle. Good morning. Good morning, people popping in. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Yeah, I was saying, if anybody feeling sick, like I got, I'm down with something again. It's like the third time I've been sick this year so far, which is not a good sign. I know something's going around. We had a bunch of absent students this week. Good morning. Well, I have vitamins that I've been taking. I have been taking since yesterday when it really. I thought it was just maybe allergies or something with spring coming in soon, but I have been taking like those. What is it? Emergency drinks. They supposedly have like a lot of extra whatever in there since yesterday. But when I realized I was actually sick and not just having an allergy, but I take the vitamin C's and a bunch of other stuff pretty regularly, most every day, and I Good morning. Yeah, so that's what I've been taking, but yeah, I ended my classes early yesterday. Oh, my class yesterday. I had just one, but walked out of there. So went through the lecture. We need to get through the demos, etc., and then called it there and let them go. So. Cancel time. Good morning. Good morning, Bosch. How you doing? Excuse me. Ah, good morning. Hmm. Yeah, definitely feeling I think the medicine is starting to wear off. Oof. All right, add some white on here and flip it over. All right. Wait for that to dry, I guess, a second. Oof. not dry yet. Not quite. Still a little wet up there. Good grief. Is it stuck there? There you go. Alright, that's dry. I can flip this over. Well, I gotta scoot this over, so. Good morning. Is it people being getting ill over in La España? I got sick this week. I thought I was just having maybe allergies, with spring coming in, but had a bunch of sick students this week too, but yesterday I ended my class early. We were doing the whole 2-point perspective thing. Once I got through all of my demos and I sent them all away. So the professor came in to talk to me. It was funny because he's like, "Oh, how you doing? I'm so-and-so. Let me shake your hand." I'm like, "You don't want to do that." Sorry, don't touch me, you person I don't know. Like, you lowly part-time adjunct teacher, get thee away from me. Don't touch my full-timeness over here. That's true. That's that whole southern European and Latin culture, right? Everybody always kissing each other on the cheeks. I think you said you were from, was it Estonia, if I recall, originally? And that's definitely like a no-touch culture up there. Maybe you should let them know that they got bad, that they smell bad. I remember when Axe cologne was in um, all the movie theaters. Well, like different parts of the United States, you get different levels of cultural friendliness. So I remember kind of being shocked after living in New York for a couple years, then driving through the Midwest. So, the state's kind of between the mountains, and just kind of that the different the level of friendliness is very different. So New Yorkers tend to be more less friendly. They like to brag that they're friendly, but they are not actually that friendly. They're more standoffish. Or similar, like in Pennsylvania, people tend to be more kind of impersonal. They not so they don't greet you like they're your long lost friends or something like that when you meet them for the first time. Um, um, but so I remember like one time my professors in New York, he came. He's like, New Yorkers were really not that bad. He's like, I saw someone carry a suitcase up the subway for somebody else, and I was like, well, that's nice, but like that's like a normal human thing. That's not like it's like for an elderly lady or a mother or something like that. But I didn't see that as being like an unusual act of kindness. I was like more of just like a standard thing that you would expect someone to do, or at least one person to step up and do. Just anywhere else. But for him, it was like unusual. So I pointed out that because it's unusual for you, maybe you ought to reconsider that. Well, I mean, not that every person would stop and help someone, but like there would probably be at least one person who would take notice of that, and then help the person carry that up. Um, but but I just thought he was funny. He thought like, oh look, we're not that bad. I'm like, my thought too is like, well, you weren't the one that went over to help her. Well, I think half the problem these days, like being friendly to a stranger on the street, can lead to all kinds of problems too. It could be some influencer on Instagram playing a practical joke on you. Um, um, so that's part of it too, right? Is there's a lot of these pranksters online doing random stuff that's annoying. Not that I run into that very often, but I remember like I went to go out to they have the thing called First Fridays here for art galleries, and walking along, and all of a sudden some guy just shoves a microphone in my face. It's like live stream. He was officially part of the event, but it was still just like, I don't ask that in my face. Um, yeah, well, they're just looking to get, it's people looking to get attention, right? And this is a vehicle for doing that. Historically, you would probably be restricted by to doing that kind of stuff when you were younger, just because if you were from a small town, most people didn't leave their towns, right? They would grow up and die in the same place, within the same geography. I think like historically before the 20th century, like everyone lived and died within like a 15-mile radius of where they were born, and um, and that made like if you kind of messed up your reputation locally past a certain age, that was a big problem. Um, and so that didn't really used to exist because you had to deal with the people that you were around all the time, and so yeah, I think it's true in a lot of the world. Like you go to, I met a lady in driving across country. I think it was in Kansas or Nebraska. For me, Kansas and Nebraska are basically the same state. Like they're both north of Texas, and so kind of geographically, they're both completely flat. And that's where it's part of the American breadbasket, where they grow all the wheat and corn. So but you drive across that state, it's completely flat. And there's no mountains. There's some valleys and things like that, a little bit, ins and outs, but nothing significant. No ocean, obviously. I don't even think there's any major lakes in those states. No large bodies of water, maybe ponds or small lakes or something like that. But I met this lady when I stopped at this hotel, and she was probably in her mid-50s, early 60s, something like that. So mature older lady, and she's like, "Oh, you're going out to California?" Because I was going to go see my sister who used to live out in California, and she's like, "I've never seen the ocean, so I really want to see the ocean." And says, but my husband says no because it just costs too much money. And he's German, and so he doesn't want to spend any money. And I'm like, well, just get in a car and go. Hop in your car, take a 2-3 day drive out to the ocean, and you'll get to see it. you know. But I imagine there's a lot of people like that. They've never left where they're from, and so there's, I see a lot of that out there around different parts of the world. Yeah. Yeah, the United States is really big, but it takes. If you're to, there's one road called the I-80, means Interstate 80, and it goes from New York City, so the East Coast, to San Francisco. It to the West Coast. They're on the same road. It also cuts through Chicago in a line. So it weaves like this a little bit as it crosses the country, but it's one road that crosses that. And it takes, I think it's about, if you don't stop, I think it's like a 36-hour drive. So if you were to type into your Maps app, driving from New York City to San Francisco, it'll show you the route on the I-80 mostly. But it takes like 36 hours to drive that far. It's a big country. People forget that, United States is really big. I've driven across it a few times, so it doesn't seem that big to me, but I remember when I lived in Estonia, I think it was like an hour and a half to drive diagonally across the country. Or when I was in Lithuania, I think it's like a 3-hour drive from Vilnius to Klaipėda. Yeah, and then like if you want to go to Alaska, you have to drive through Canada to get there, but or take a ferry from Washington State. Yeah, just little place. Because I lived in Tartu for a few months, a long time ago, back in the 90s. Yeah, well, I mean it's apparently they're doing pretty well, compared to where they were before, financially. I was there when they installed the was it the kissing couple with the umbrella in downtown Tartu with the Leaning Tower of Tartu, but yeah, so it's like I think like to drive from my parents' house to the ocean, like to California, if you go that route, southern like LA area, I think it's like a 10-hour drive. Yeah, Spain's relatively large for a European country. I think, is Germany the largest one on the main continent outside of Russia? Yeah, but it's an interesting kind of different perspective. Yeah, it's mostly in Asia. I mean, the Ural Mountains, which is what they consider the boundary for Europe, that's inside of Russia. I think it's past where Moscow is, somewhere. I forget the exact location. Um, we're almost at an hour. Yeah. But yeah, the same, people will famously take, the Trans-Siberian Railroad, right? That's like an interesting, like, trip that people will do as a vacation. Maybe if we get things more normalized between the West and Russia, we can, that could be an option. It's something I would like to. I've been to Russia a couple times. Um, Yeah. They actually did a movie a few years ago. I never watched it. Didn't look like it was very good. But it was like about a couple of American tourists that get caught up in some drug cartel that's using the Trans-Siberian Railroad as a shipping method for drugs. Of course, you know. Um, but I don't remember what it was called. It didn't look very. I mean, it looked pretty, standard, generic slop. But it was. I think it was all filmed on the Trans-Siberian Railroad at different locations. Um, but yeah, it didn't strike me as like the kind of movie I would go out of my way to watch. I did watch. I found out. Speaking of shows, I found out a while ago, but I just forgot about it because I get busy. But apparently, with my mobile service, my cell phone, I get Apple TV Plus for free, and there's not a lot on there I'd want to watch. I was temporarily subscribed to it when I got my last iPad, my current one, and um, and some of the shows are pretty good. Some of them are kind of generic, but I've been hearing all about this Severance show for the last couple of years, and I hadn't gotten around to watching it. And so, knowing that was free, I was like, hey, I'll go ahead and watch that. And so, yeah, it's really great. Actually, it's funny, I found online, well, just after I started watching it, there's a 8-hour long soundtrack of it on YouTube for Severance. It's officially done by Apple, and it's like Music to Refine to, I think is what it's called. And it's free. Um, yeah, I sent it to my students. I should link to it or something. But yeah, it's on YouTube. 8 hours long. Yeah, it's music. It's for a full day's work, right? 8 hours. Music to refine. It's like different. It has to do with like different parts of the show. So usually when they make a TV show, they just make a lot of music that they can then refer back to for different kinds of scenes or different events, rather than making brand new soundtracks for the whole show as they go. Um, so yeah, music to refine to. I've been wondering if it's like license free, like if I could put it, play it in the background while I draw on stream or something like that. But I wasn't able to find that information, so I'm gonna guess it's not. But it would be nice if it were. I mean, they put the whole thing there on YouTube, so. But because I don't mind having the music playing in the background or something while I work. It's just I don't know what's legit, what you can, what you can't. I don't want to deal with any of those AI channels or anything. So well, I mean, just like I have headphones on, so I always do that. But just like some people are like, why don't you have some sound on in the background while you're working? I'm like, well, I have sound on. You may not. Um, but it's 8 hours long of music to refine to, and we still don't know what that is, right? I guess there should be a new episode today. The other one that I'm really liking right now is what's it called? What's it called? It's on HBO, and Side effects include, or something like that, I think it's called. It's about a guy who discovers a literal panacea, so a medicine that heals all illnesses. It's a mushroom he finds. I think I broke his arm. I sketched it in over there. Yeah, so I got caught up on that, and then yeah, the side effects one is done by the same people that did Scavenger's Reign. So it's the same type of style. They have like their characters are kind of differently proportioned. They have like this funky kind of look to them. Their build, they have like really big heads. But that one's really great so far. Anyway, it's about a guy who finds this. Anyway, he's being hunted by a pharmacy company because they don't want people getting hold of this drug because it's really easy to grow and you know it's basically free. And this guy wants to give it away for free. And so he's running across country looking for a place where he can grow it safely after escaping from South America. With it, but yeah, it's really, yeah, Scavenger's Reign was really good. They were hoping to do a season 2, but it just never got enough following. It's on Netflix, I think. It was originally an HBO show, which is why they're doing this new side effects show. But yeah, so it's about this guy who finds it, and then he's being hunted by this pharmacy company. They're using the government to go after him. So there's a couple of FBI agents that are chasing him down and trying to investigate him. They think it's for something else than what they're actually doing, but I'm not familiar with Mindhunter. I finished watching The Terror the other week. Finally, I was saving for like camping trips, and finally was like, yeah, there's just a few episodes left, and polish it off. That was pretty great. About guys getting stuck in the ice looking for the Northwest Passage. A bunch of British sailors, and they encounter a mystical bear god after getting stuck. So I forget the name of the actors in it. He's really well, people like him. But he plays one of the leadership on the boat. I was sad when they canceled that Hannibal TV series all those years ago. That was pretty great. Yeah, The Terror, yeah, it's really, really good. And it's very psychological. What, The Terror or murder stuff? It's like one of those things with TV shows is basically like serial killer shows. That's a form of chick crack. Especially if they're like really descriptive of all the terrible things that happen. It's like that is like hardcore like honey trap for women. It's like, what if that happened to me? Or they want to know how they want to know how to murder their husbands more effectively or something. But yeah, it's 100% like So yeah, if you don't want to, if you don't want to watch romantic comedies, you can always recommend like a serial killer movie to your wife or something like that. Like, well, this is really terrible movie with all these horrible crimes in it. And she'll be like, oh, I don't want to see that. It sounds scary. And then she'll insist you go see it. And so that way you can go see the movie too. Well, they say the difference between comedy and tragedy is that the only real difference is that a comedy has a happy ending, right? So like if we think of like Wile E. Coyote and all of his antics with the Roadrunner, it would be a tragedy if he was like permanently injured from all the terrible things that happened to them. But it's funny because you know it kind of resets every time. Um, um, yeah, so that's a good Valentine's date idea, right? Just go watch a serial killer movie. But yeah, hey, you never know, right? It's like one of the things that people kind of freak out about today is like protecting kids out on the street or whatever. Worried that someone's going to kidnap them or something terrible will happen when the fact of the matter is overall crime has gone down significantly, at least in the United States, over the last 50 years, and like kids are far safer than they ever were, but they're also parents are also extra hyper vigilant at the same time. It's like they could have their kids walk to school; it probably would never ever be a problem. But now they're like you have to like go door to door and make sure they stay in and all these other things when it's probably not necessary overall. Yeah. Well, it's like I don't know how it is now, but I think Phoenix, Arizona, for a while was the like the biggest city for kidnapping. But because the crimes were happening among people who were here illegally, we just don't know it because we don't have any documentation for those people, and so they were being there's all kinds of situations where because they're not here officially, there's no real protection for them. So that's why they estimate that like, there's a ton of like human trafficking and crime with children, etc. Because there's this whole community of people, millions of people, and only if you take a small percentage of them, and they're being terribly dealt with, but they don't have any legal standing, And that's one of the problems you have with that kind of open border approach is it creates this whole mass of people. My brother said recently, because they've been doing all these the new president, they've been doing all these kinds of crackdowns on mostly focusing on criminals. I remember there was like that video that went around of like showing these illegals getting like chained up and put on a plane, and I don't think they emphasized well enough that those people were all like actual like felons, like violent criminals they were sending out of the country. They weren't like they weren't people who were out picking strawberries or something like that. But one of the things that my brother said has happened in his neighborhood, they found as these raids have been going on, was there was this farm like within like 20 miles of where my brother lives, where basically there was a bunch of these guys being held captive as slaves at this local farm. People would like go by at the farm, the farmers market kind of farm, and they had this house and they were basically kept as slaves. I think they were paid like a really small amount, but they couldn't leave. He wouldn't let them leave because you can threaten people that way. And that was out in Minnesota. I haven't seen the news article for that, but that was something that was out that way. So it's like people like to say it's not an issue or it's not a problem, but there's like real human harm that can happen if you just let that kind of situation fester. And it's like people got mad when they were doing like the separation from parents thing, back to, was it 2016, when the first time he came into office. But the fact is you don't know if those kids are traveling with their parents. In fact, most of them aren't. A lot of them travel with those that are coming here to actually come here, like to be with their family, are usually traveling with a relative. But a lot of times they're not. Like they could be traveling with a complete stranger and disappear. So it's like there's real problems, but like those don't get brought up in the news. Real problems that cause real people real harm. And it's not just, that neighbor down the street that doesn't speak any English that, works really hard and is super friendly. It's, there's the potential there for all kinds of issues. And it's just weird that discourse isn't allowed to happen like it should. Maybe that tells us something about the people there. I get annoyed with the conversation because it seems like it's happening like out of any side, like out of both sides of their mouths, which so yeah, the part of the problem I think we have, at least in the United States, is because we have this effective two-party system. It becomes like a red versus blue team thing, and makes certain things almost impossible to happen. And I think that's one of the reasons why we have all the problems that we do have, is because of that. It's like, it's been interesting to watch kind of the political shift, because I don't consider myself attached to either of these groups. Well, we get political on here, right? But I look at like the people that switched over to Democrat under Trump's first term, and a lot of these people that switched over, these were like the biggest people that got America into a lot of the wars that we've been in, the neocons. People like Bill Kristol, who's I forget the name of his magazine he used to have that he shut down a few years ago. But people like him and others that were like the major like advocates for war, they all shifted over to the Democrat Party. And then you look at like the current, a lot of the current people going, not all of them, but like a lot of the major big names in the current administration. Tulsi Gabbard, she was a Bernie supporter. Like she was a big Bernie supporter back in the day. Or, RFK, whatever, science or anti-science attitudes he has, he was Democrat his whole life, big environmental advocate, I think generally anti-war, et cetera, et cetera. And of course Trump himself, he's a lifelong Democrat in New York, right? He contributed to the Hillary Clinton campaigns and a bunch of others. He was pro-gay marriage before politicians were. So it's I don't know what any of that means. But it's just interesting to watch like all the people that were that got us into the biggest messes of our lives are all joined one side, and people that were kind of outcast from the other side joined on that one. So it's been an interesting political shift to observe going on. Actually, if you want to have some fun, if you want to have some political fun, you can find a debate with Bill Kristol versus a guy named Scott Horton. Scott Horton's runs a site called antiwar.com, does a bunch of interviews on there with journalists and anti-war activists. But they had a debate a couple of years ago, and Bill Kristol was just dragged across the floor and like beat hard. I mean, I'm surprised he comes out in public at all, like has anything to say after that debate, because like every policy that he's advocated for was kind of discussed in that debate, and like he had no good justifications for any of them, and in fact kind of admitted so during that debate. And you can find it online. Scott Horton, like Horton Hears a Who, Horton versus Bill Kristol. I think Kristol spelled with a K. That's an hour or so long. And then Scott Horton, he's written like a bunch of books on the corruption of the war regime and a bunch of other things that are relative to that. But most famous for doing, he's got like thousands of interviews. He kind of became an expert because he was the guy that would look up all of the what do they call those, all the footnotes for the articles for the guy that used to run the site, who passed away a couple years ago. But his background was just like, he's just a taxi driver out of Texas. But it's a really interesting debate to watch. I don't think it got nearly enough noise as it should have. But it's on YouTube. I think it's the Soho Forum. Well, it was really interesting just because, like, you would expect him to, for someone who's, I think in his 60s or older, and he's been active, within journalism and advocacy and political activism and for decades, this Bill Kristol guy, he's one of the people that helped build the justifications for the Iraq wars. I think all of them in the media. And when, like, barely like pushed back on, like he had nothing to say, like no real justification for any of the things that he's advocated for. I think I even asked him at one point, like, if there was like one good outcome that he could like name that, you know, came out the way he thought it would come out and worked out that way. And I forget which one it was. It might have been the Yugoslavian involvement in the 90s, maybe. But excuse me. I think my drugs are starting to wear off. All right, well, have a good one. Yeah, I should probably stop. I've been at for an hour and a half. I just wanted to like do some loose pencils on these guys and then call it a morning study. I've got a bunch of stuff to write today. I've got grading to get caught up on. I got a bunch of stuff to do. So. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you haven't seen that debate, it's pretty good because you look at this, you know, this person who's just been this, you know, villain for justifying all of the madness and like it nothing. It's often true with a lot of these people we see, personalities we see on TV, where you know they only look good because they're surrounded by people who are working to make them look good, and as soon as they get like picked on a little bit, they just fold instantly because they rely on all of that external support. Yeah, Scott Horton versus Bill Kristol. Anyway, I should probably stop there. Get on to the next things. I got a bunch of stuff to write and grade all day long this weekend, so I'm not really looking forward to that, but oh well. 02, and today is the 28th, which is awesome. 2 months into the new year, so thanks for coming in for conversation, and we'll talk to you all next time.